Firstly, a brief history of the range. The range was established in the late 1940s, essentially in answer to the long-range intercontinental ballistic missile threat from the Soviet Union. The area was actually reserved for the range in April 1946, and this was a vast tract of land in the far northwest of South Australia, an equally large area in Western Australia, and a missile corridor 4,200 kilometres long out into the Indian Ocean. The actual construction of the range began in May 1947, and the first aircraft landed at Woomera on the 4th of July 1947. The first trial, a parachute trial, was conducted in December 1947, and the first missile was fired in 1949, and this was the first of about 6,000 over the next 30 years. The reason why Woomera is so important is because it's a very huge area. The airspace we can control from 0 to infinity. It's extremely safe because of the very, very low population density, roughly one person per 1,000 square kilometres, despite the fact that there are 4 mines operating out there. These mines are actually just little pinpricks, dots on the landscape, and they really don't give us much problem at all. Also, the security of the area, because of its remoteness, the fact that there are very few roads, it is extremely secure for us to be able to conduct the type of trials that we need to do up there. It's also flat, which makes it easy for and ideal for recovery of bits that drop off or that land after tests, and we do actually go out these days and recover every single piece of range produce that we fire out onto the range. Importantly, the range is electronically very, very quiet. It's one of the most electronically quiet ranges in the world. Encroachment on ranges, particularly in the United States, has rendered a lot of them particularly difficult to use for modern electronic warfare type trials, but Woomera is ideally suited, and it's one of the reasons for the major resurgence in the use of Woomera as a weapons testing range. Between 1947 and 1980, the heyday of the range, of the old range, there was around 7,000 people who lived at Woomera in a very remote community. Amazing, interesting stories about what people did and how they made their life interesting up there. In that very remote spot. The roads were very bad to Woomera, and the main way of getting in and out of Woomera was either by train or by air. The picture you see here is of the main rocket launcher area at Lake Hart. There was 4 planned, 3 started, 2 finished, but only 1 ever used in the end. Another part of what went on at Woomera was the atomic bomb tests, which were conducted at Maralinga and the Montebello Islands out to the west of Australia in the 1950s, a controversial period, of course. And it's probably one of the things that made Woomera an extremely well-known spot around the world back in the 1950s. Another important thing often overlooked in the history of Woomera was its support to the NASA Gemini moon mission programs. And there were 3 stations, one at Red Lake to the north of Woomera, Mirracata well to the west of Woomera, and Island Lagoon, known as Deep Space Station 41, about 27 kilometres south of Woomera. The roads you can still see, but all the equipment's obviously gone. And in fact, the big dish that's shown in the picture there works so well that it was actually dismantled and taken back to the United States at the end of the Gemini program in the early 1970s, and is still in operation in the United States today. In November 1967, such was the knowledge of Australia, and obviously we had the rocket launch facility, that we were able to design and build our own orbital platform, and in fact the RAAF rocket and orbital platform was launched on the 29th of November 1967. Now this effectively made Australia the 4th nation in the world to design and build its own satellite and put it into space from its own territory. Unfortunately, it's the only time we've ever done it. Another major program that existed at Woomera for over 30 years was the Joint Defence Facility at Narunga. It was established in 1969, just to the south of Woomera, about 18 kilometres south of Woomera. That project closed in 1999. The JDFN, it was known, the Joint Defence Facility in Narunga, was part of the US and NATO Global First Strike Communications and Response System, and it was jointly operated between the Royal Australian Air Force and the United States Air Force. In 2007, Woomera's unique role in the global development of aerospace technology was formally recognised by the world-renowned American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics. This essentially proclaimed the WTR, or Woomera Test Range, as a World Historic Aerospace Site and put it on a rating that said it was of similar importance to Tranquility Base on the Moon, where the first humans set foot, and also Kitty Hawk in the United States, where the first heavy-aircraft flight was conducted back at the beginning of last century. A quick look at the governance and strategic management of the range now. This slide that you can see now is what we call Woomera on a page, and essentially shows the main features of Woomera, including the RAAF base in the bottom right hand corner, which consists of Woomera Village and Woomera Aerodrome, and then what we use the range for on a normal day-to-day basis. So you can see testing of UAVs, launching of rockets, testing of electronic warfare, firing missiles, dropping bombs. That's what we do on a daily basis at Woomera. The Chief of Air Force, as the capability manager of the Woomera Test Range, has listed an intention for the Woomera Range Complex, and in simple terms, this is what it says. Firstly, that we are a warfighting enabling capability, so we enable the main parts of the Defence Force to conduct operations by making sure that the equipment that people use, the systems that people use, work as they are advertised to work. So we primarily exist, therefore, to test and evaluate war material, all sorts of war material. We're operated by Air Force, but we also exist to support the whole of defence and other national requirements. And under other national requirements, that means things such as supporting space research, which is not testing of war material. And you might remember back in 2010 when the Japanese JAXA Corporation brought back a deep space probe from an asteroid, and that space probe landed at the Woomera Test Range after its long journey of about 7 years. So that's an example of national requirements, which isn't testing of war material. We don't have much space to do that type of work simply because of the fact we're very busy doing normal defence work. The organisation of the range, the Woomera Range Complex, the Woomera Range headquarters is based in Adelaide at RAAF Base Edinburgh, and essentially at the headquarters oversees access to and use of the Woomera Range Complex. It has its own legislation, and that controls the range, and that's pretty well what the Woomera Range headquarters is responsible for ensuring that the use of the range is compliant with that legislation. The range has two major formations, which is the Woomera Test Range, which is run by the Woomera Range Trials Unit, and RAAF Base Woomera, which consists of the air base in the village. The air base is run by number 20 Squadron RAAF Base Woomera, and Defence Support and Reform Group from the Defence Department look after the operation of the village. At the Woomera Test Range itself, the ground area is known as the Woomera Prohibited Area. We have the Narunga Test Area, the Woomera Restricted Airspace, which is all the airspace over the prohibited area, and Camp Rapier, which is another part of the range near, or it's actually contained within the RAAF base itself, which is controlled by the range. The actual range itself, well, we exist to enable the testing of war material to deliver more effective warfighters. That's our mission. We don't actually conduct trials ourselves. What we do is create the environment for the client users of the range to come in and conduct the trials. And when we conduct those trials, to meet our mission, we operate in four main areas. First of all, we provide operational environments for the testing of air and space-based weapon systems, the testing of ground-based weapon systems, the testing and disposal of hazardous war material, so old weapons, basically old bombs and rockets. We take them up there and blow them up and get rid of them. And we also provide the opportunity for the conduct of force preparedness and other warfighting readiness, training, testing and evaluation, which is our new development. And this is very much about the modern network integrated warfighting that's required, and this is very much where the range is going in the future. The Woomera capability is unique, and we are the only asset left in the world which is capable of testing all of the next generation of weapon system within our land borders. And this is one of the reasons also why the range has become very, very important and is essentially back in full operation after a hiatus of around about 20 to 25 years. Through joint activities with our major allies, we play a key role in Australia's desired status as an emerging middle-level world power, and over the next 7 to 8 years the range is being progressively updated to meet the ADF's defined needs for test and evaluation support through to 2035 and beyond. Now, as an example of the type of outputs that we have, strategic outputs, particularly what we call research and experimentation. So this is the stuff that you might not see on the ground for 20 to 25 years, and a good example of that is the hypersonics engine testing that is conducted at Woomera. These engines, when they're fitted to aeroplanes in the future, will take you from Sydney to London in 2.5 hours. At the operational level of work, this is about maintaining the force in being. So we have a lot of weapon systems that are actually in position or in service at the moment within the ADF, and it's very important that these are constantly tested to make sure that they are going to do what's required of them if ever this is the situation. At the tactical level, we provide direct support to operations. So this is figures that are actually in country, overseas on operational service. There are a number of activities conducted at Woomera which is in direct support of those activities overseas. These are known as our Priority 1 task. And in particular, what you see there is CIED task force work, which is the Counter Improvised Explosive Device, which is the roadside bombs. This is a huge problem these days, and the work to counter those IEDs is incredibly important work, and a lot of that is carried out at Woomera, and particularly at Narunga. This is This slide also shows a major area of development work that goes on at Woomera. This is for UAVs. And you can see in this particular slide in the top left there's the Mantis, which was a program that was conceptualised, designed, built and flown within about 18 months. The British did that back in 2011, 2012. First time they had conducted a program of this nature since the Second World War. Other aircraft that you can see there in the bottom right hand corner is the Air Force's Heron program, which is currently based at Woomera and continues to operate there. A quick overview of the range itself. As you can see, most of the facilities are concentrated in the bottom right hand corner, and this is because of the huge distances that are involved in the range, that most of our infrastructure is close together. So Pastor is our, what we know as the Parakelia standoff target area, and that's about 115 kilometres away from the village. Range E is our instrumented range, and the range head, you can see is that little yellow dot there in the actual range map. That little yellow dot is one of the three areas that's actually owned by the Defence Department. Defence does not own any of the Woomera prohibited area apart from a small spot at the range head, at the village and at Narunga. This map gives you a slightly better picture of our infrastructure in that bottom right hand corner. You can see the Narunga area just to the south of the Woomera village in the bottom right hand corner. That's about 18 kilometres south of the village. About 6 kilometres north of the village is the airfield, and then about 30 kilometres north of the airfield is Range G. That's where we do most of our large scale explosive testing, up to about 100 tonnes of explosive. Out to the west of the airfield we have the Lake Heart area, where we do a lot of our electronic warfare testing, and Range E, which is our instrumented range, which we have timing and communications or telemetry information, radars and optical instruments stationed along the centre line, and that's basically to capture the behavioural characteristics of weapons that we test fire at the range. This picture shows the Range Control Centre, which is a very large building. It's situated about 45 kilometres west of the village, and the building is capable of holding about 400 people. So it's quite a large facility, and it's essentially our main rocket control, range control facility. Another couple of areas of the range which are quite important is Camp Rapier, which I've mentioned. This is a secure specialist combat force preparation and support facility, mostly used by the Army. Has an Afghan village complex which has been established in there, and this is where a lot of the diggers do their training before they go overseas to search for and find bombs and bomb making equipment and that sort of stuff, and weapons. So they learn a lot of techniques and facilities here before going overseas. The Narunga test area, as I've already mentioned, this is where we do an enormous amount of our counter-IED and EW trials activities. This is a very busy site now. Over the 200 days a year that it's available for use, it's actually in use about 132 days a year, so it's a very busy site. The type of people, or the main users of the range, pretty well all the Australian Department of Defence. So we get ministerial direction, we get direction from the Vice Chief of Defence Group, that's where the CIED Task Force people are attached to that particular group. Air Force Headquarters and Force Element Groups of the Air Force, which are obviously a main user of the range, but we also have Australian Army, Naval and other forces, special forces which use the range. We're not a training range as such. We don't allow particularly manoeuvre across the ground, simply because we don't own it. It's quite fragile. Most of the stuff we do at Woomera is in the air. And we also support the Capability Development Group, which is the Australian Test and Evaluation Office, Defence Material Organisation, Defence Science and Technology Organisation, and other special programs that are run by the Defence Department. We also get national tasking through from the Prime Minister's and Cabinet area. A lot of that is to do with disaster relief work, and Department of Innovation, Industry, Innovation, Science and Research, which is where programs such as NASA and space research activities come through. These are non-military programs, and also the famous Hayabusa program from Japan comes through that office. On the range itself, we have timing and communications, what's known as telemetry, which is often attached to the weapons and rockets that we fire, just so we can track where it is. And then we also optically track it and radar track it as well. Our systems on the range are specifically safety systems designed to make sure that if anything happens, the weapon being tested or the vehicle being tested, if it goes off track, we have the ability to cut it down inside the safety template. And that's obviously a major part of the work that we do. We don't actually collect the information itself on the weapons that are tested. That's done by the clients. We simply operate the range control and safety system. We have air and ground live firing ranges, electronic warfare testing ranges, ground-based weapons testing areas, large and small scale explosive ordnance testing areas. We can conduct space launches and recoveries. We have, as I said, already said, the range control and safety area facility, and we have large ground target facilities as well. So the next generation of Woomera, coming towards the end of the brief, This is about what we're going to do for the future, and essentially our equipment is fairly old, so over the next 7 to 8 years, all our radar systems, all our timing communications are all being completely upgraded, and by around about 2019, 2020, the range will be one of the most modern in the world. Just a brief look at the Woomera support base itself. There's two main areas of the base. The Woomera Aerodrome area, which is about 6 kilometres north of the village. This is within the restricted area, but Woomera village itself remains open to the public. The airfield is a 7,500 foot strip capable of operating every aircraft in the ADF, including our heaviest aircraft. We have 3 hangars, big air movements area, base area, refuelling area, ordnance loading areas, and we operate all fast jet and heavy aircraft types. The village itself is our domestic support area, but it's open to the public. We have approximately 150 to 200 base residents, and we can support up to 400 transit personnel on any one day. We also get around 80,000 visitors a year to look at our 3 museums. And these are the main services at the range. We have a 3-star hotel with 500 beds, and obviously that's our main support facility for the range activities. A lot of people who come to Woomera say, no, nothing happens here, and that's because essentially everybody's working on the range, so there's very little activity in the village during the day. Camp Rapier, which is only about 2 or 3 kilometres from the village itself, there's another 200 beds in there, and that's mostly where the army stay when they come to Woomera, because they usually come in large numbers of 150 to 180 people. And they like to be in Camp Rapier. The medical clinic, we have a medical clinic and the RFDS support. We have a lot of trial support services that are necessary, and this may include everything from the hire of a vehicle down to supply of special fuels. We have security services, including the South Australian Police Service operate out of the village. We have a swimming pool, many social clubs, a radio station. We have a 560-seat conference theatre and conference facility and theatre. Banking and post office agencies, religious services, a bowling alley, courtesy of the Americans when they left. They left their bowling alley, which was very nice of them. And we, as I said, we have 3 museums, a heritage centre and Missile Park, which is quite famous. We also have fitness and squash facilities as well, and a range of sports clubs and other social and recreation clubs. So that's the overview of the Woomera Range Complex. I hope you found that interesting, and if you ever get the chance to visit Woomera, it's a good idea to get up there, stay the night, spend the day having a look around, stay another night, and then move on to some of the other areas around the Woomera, such as Cubesat and Andanuka, which is without a doubt also worth a visit. So thank you for that, and I hope you've enjoyed this brief overview of the Woomera Range Complex.